2 weeks before Feynman died, producer Christopher Sykes, who had known him for 7 years, recorded on home videotape a conversation with him in Los Angeles. He talked about his many adventures with Ralph Layton, including their 10-year obsession with a strange and remote country called Tannu, Tuva.
He's a very good friend of mine. I like to tease him a little. And he had been teaching arithmetic and algebra, rather, to us in high school. And then he told us that they gave him a geography class. And I know that he would do a fairly good job in geography because he listens to the shortwave, and therefore he gets a pretty good feel where everything is. Nevertheless, I wanted to tease him. So I said, "Oh, you know all about geography, huh?" And he answered, "Yeah, he listens shortly." I said, "Okay, whatever happened to Tannu, Tuva?" Because as a matter of fact, it was in the back of my head always. I knew that there was this country when I was a kid that my father explained to me was an independent country that had these interesting stamps. I think he had shown me on the map where it was, and it was a purple area in the middle of some big green thing in the middle of Asia somewhere. And as time went on, I never heard of it again. And it's supposed to be an independent country, so it must have disappeared somehow. And so in the back of my mind was this question, and I said, whatever happened to Tannu, Tuva? Because I knew damn well he'd never heard of it, and also that he'd think I was kidding him, that there was such a thing, because I like to tease by that kind of method. You see, you're making up a country that doesn't exist. And so he said, "I'm making up a country that doesn't exist." "Oh yeah?" I said, "I got the encyclopedia, huh?" And we looked it up on a map, and sure enough, there's a Tannu, Tuva. And that was a surprise. And where was it? Just outside of Outer Mongolia, in the middle of Central Asia, in the depths of Russia, far away from anything. And it was no longer an independent country. It was a part of Russia. And we saw that the capital, this is what did it, the capital was Kyzyl. My wife and I and he, at the same time, looked and grinned at each other. Because any place that's got a capital named Kyzyl's just gotta be interesting. We couldn't get any information at all. At first, we started out in San Francisco when we were there playing drums for a ballet. We had a job. And then we would use the spare time to go to the library. And we didn't know where to begin, so we thought we'd go to Travels in Central Siberia, which is right where it is, Central Siberia. So you get all these books of people traveling in Central Siberia. And nobody went through Tuva. They went down around below it, or they went around above it. But whenever they went through Central Siberia, they missed it, because it was a kind of a bowl. And if you went down in, you'd have to climb back out. And there was no particular reason to go through it. It was just in the way, so everybody seemed to dodge it. So surprisingly, in spite of all these books about travels in Central Siberia, we found no information.
Then one day, Feynman and Layton came across a rare book published in Berlin in 1931 and written by the German historian and explorer Otto Mencken-Helfen.
I was the first non-Russian to set foot in the Republic of Tuva. It took a lot of trouble to obtain permission to go. I went as an ethnologist, pointing out that ethnologists are as harmless as mushroom connoisseurs or stamp collectors. I did not bring with me especially high expectations of Kyzyl, but what I encountered was nonetheless astonishing. The Kyzyl electric plant works only when the movie theatre is running. I saw the beautiful Podovkin film Mother there. Tuvans rode from far and wide to look at this wonder. The film broke at least 20 times that night, but that only made the audience happy. So much the better. Now the fairy tale would last that much longer. They couldn't understand anything, not the slightest bit. The subtitles were in Russian. They couldn't read them, but their pleasure was nevertheless unending. When horses appeared, the whole place went crazy. They screamed and jumped up. They had a magnificent time. They didn't worry at all about who was a gendarme and who was a revolutionary, because they didn't understand what the fight was about. Whoever just fired, that was their man. Only once were they incensed and raving. I didn't understand the reason. The film didn't show anything outlandish. Running feet, a raised arm, a face. But that was precisely why. What they were shouting was translated for me. We paid full price. Why do you show us just a foot? Where is the head? We want to see a whole person. Why do you make the screen so small? We demand a screen on which a whole person has room. We want a big screen. A big screen. Big screen.
It has everything. It still, as far as I know, has everything. We had discovered, you see, a Shangri-La, a place in the world that nobody visited in a long time. And so we all, right then and there, said, we got to go there, of course. I have won a Nobel Prize, and it is a pain in the neck. And it destroys a great deal of the adventure of life for me. And it saddens, it cuts off lots of things I would like to do in a sort of easy way, like a normal human being. I didn't see that the publicity would be so terrible. I didn't want it. I knew right away I didn't want it. I tried to figure out how not to get it, but like many other people who have gotten it, they realize after a few moments that if they refuse it, it would make more publicity than if you got it. A big shot he thinks he is, he refuses the Nobel Prize. You don't want that either. And what I think is the solution to this is that they should at least have the courtesy, the Swedish Academy, when they choose somebody, to call him up quietly and to offer him the prize. And if he doesn't want it, he can then say no, and there'll be no publicity because nobody has been told yet. And it would seem to me a rather simple solution. We were asked by someone to, she wanted to make a ballet of purely percussion music. I thought that's crazy. I thought ballets were like nothing but Swan Lake and so on. And so she designed this ballet, and we went up to San Francisco as if it was a regular job. We got paid. We went to rehearsals. We went to the thing. It was an extremely small ballet school. There weren't more than 20 or 30 people in the audience for this whole ballet, okay? But it said on the program, music composed and produced by Richard Feynman and Ralph Layton. So I have composed music for the ballet, okay? Well, it turns out, crazy like always, that she won a contest in the United States and then went to Europe with a section of this ballet and some dancers, and entered a big European contest in which it ended up with just two contenders. One was a Latvian ballet group with Swan Lake and her thing, and it was in Paris. And she reports that the audience were always applauding more for hers than the other, but that the judges decided that the Swan Lake was better. And when she went up to the judges, which is permitted, to find out what it was that was the weakness, they said the music. So we were found out, in Paris at last. Somebody had enough cultural background to recognize the fakers, right? But then we get so damn far faking it, I always find fascinating, okay? It's very simple. I propose to give some lectures in Russia. They would be delighted, I think. I come there and I say that one of the conditions is that I travel to Tuva. And they say, indeed, it's fine. And then I say, but I give the lectures in Moscow after I visit Tuva, having learned a bit, you see? And they'll have to say yes to that. and I could go. I never understood before why I don't want to do it that way. And now I suddenly do. The whole idea is to have adventure. The way to have adventure is to do things at a lower level, is not to ride on the freeway and to stop at the Holiday Inn.
All this and more at the world-famous San Bernardino Exotic Car Show this Saturday and Sunday at the National Orchard Ground.
Kino kırıksep türmen. Ekidir ben, ekidir biz. Songu murnu, barın, çın. Ol, oğlu. Silerning tuskay çül. Silerning tuskay erteminger çül.
We found somehow this Mongolian, Tuvan Russian phrase book, which was just wonderful.
Kadarçılarınga baran kançar çidirip durarsiler.
But now that we had the phrase book, we would write in Tuvan. That would probably wake somebody up, you see. And so we struggled. This is the kind of thing I love, okay? Is try to put something together. So we're taking all of the phrases and trying to make the minimum changes on any of the phrases of the phrase book so that we would have as few errors as possible. We would be able to put together the phrases in order to say, greetings to your country from ours. We have a great interest in Tuva and so on. And we hope someday to come to visit. And we would look forward to see you, and greetings and good wishes. And if there's any way that you can send us tapes of the language, we would appreciate it. All this kind of stuff. And it sounds a little odd that you could make that all out of a phrase book, but actually it was a rather good phrase book and had a lot of stuff in, so that, phono recordings and things like that. So we wrote this letter into the vacuum as usual, and nothing happened. And then one day Ralph comes running over, waving a letter in the air. He was so excited he didn't open it yet. The letter had come from Tuva with the stamps, Russian stamps, but it had come from Kizil, so we opened it. And then, of course, we couldn't read it because it was in Tuvan. We worked very patiently back and forth because we had to go through the phrase book into Russian and then from Russian into English. His name was Undar Dairuma. Greetings from Tuva. Kizil is a nice city. You will find we have a statue of the center of Asia. It was very much fun, of course, to do that, to discover different ways that they speak and how their language works and so on. And that was our first piece of anything that came out of Tuva that we received. And that was the beginning of hope. Because it took us a number of years till we got to that stage. It's the kind of a puzzle I love. It's like deciphering hieroglyphics, which I enjoy.
KPFK Los Angeles, it's time for Mario Cassetta with Many Worlds of Music.
Ralph, how do you happen to come by this record, which is a jewel?
I wrote to the author of a book about Tuva, Sevjan Weinstein, and he did most of his ethnographic work on Tuva. And he sent out this amazing record. Most people I talk to think that there is a flute or some other instrument accompanying the singer at the same time, and they're really astonished when they hear that it's one person making both of those tones.
as they're singing, there's a kind of a whistle that develops on top of the singing. And so it sounds like a man with two voices. Ralph has this car, which has a license plate saying Tuva. For the fun of it, we had the car outside on the street in front here. We got some friends of ours to take our picture, trying to push this automobile as if it's kind of run out of gas or something, up the hill. We're faking, of course, that we're pushing so hard. And we got a picture, so we sent it to Undar and said, see how hard we're working to get to Tuva. It's Tuva or bust or something like that. That's a joke. And he was delighted and took it to the local newspaper, the Kizil newspaper. And they printed the picture with a caption that I think we had written, actually. Somewhere along the line, we found out that botanists, a group of botanists who were able to go to Tuva, it looked to us that they were counting the leaf buds or whatever you do when you're a botanist. And we were kind of disappointed that these guys had gotten there ahead of us, and also that they hadn't fully appreciated the wonderful place we imagined that they were going to. But we got from them the idea that the reason it was easy to go is that they had something to do. So we had to find some kind of a thing that would officially make sense that we had to go to Tuva. Then Ralph found out that there was going to be a great throat singing contest and conference for a week, somewhere way out in the west edge of Mongolia, right near Tuva. You know, it was a part of Mongolia you don't ordinarily go, and it was right near Tuva. Of course, there were various fantasy dreams of our donning old robes and old rags and so on, because we'd meet these guys. We'd meet the Tuvans in Mongolia, and then they'd carry us back in their wagons, and we'd see a part of Tuva. Maybe, okay? I know we were all excited to go to this, but you see, even if we didn't get to Tuva, that would have been interesting too. You have to understand that every plot, even though it was a high chance of failure, as far as the ultimate aim was concerned, would always turn out, we suppose, to be a big adventure. After all, it ain't everybody that goes across to visit the throat singing conference in the western part of Mongolia. So we tried to join up and sign up for this and get everything ready. And there was a change in the government, and the Minister of Culture changed. And he decided they weren't going to have a throat singing conference in Mongolia. So that fell through. Ralph discovered that there was a museum exhibit associated with the Silk Road, which had a lot of Tuvan artifacts and things in it, which was at present in Sweden. So Ralph's idea there was that he would go to Sweden, acting as if he could get that exhibit transferred to the United States. And then, when it was transferred to the United States, we would be the representative in the United States to make contact, to look at sites where the things came from, to take pictures that would work in the exhibit, to do various things associated with it. We become museum people that had to go there in order to make the exhibit work. During the conversation, in which Ralph was explaining all these costs, he finally said, I think maybe we'll do this, but what is your finder's fee? And Ralph said, there is no finder's fee. He says, well, that's kind of incredible. Well, why are you doing this? He says, because we want to arrange some way that we can get to Tuva, and that's our finder's fee. And that was the way that we first got a real chance to go to Tuva. By moving the earth, I mean, you know, by getting an exhibit to be transferred to America, and so on. Well, the Russians laughed, because 2/3 of their protocol were various gimmicks for getting Russians to come here. There were all kinds of people, 17 different people were coming from Russia for this exhibit. So they understood this trick, see? They would get to see the mysterious Disneyland. Yeah. The first ones to come were high in the system. They were the curator and Professor Kapitsa, Andrei Kapitsa. We took them around and introduced them to some of our hippie-like people who have parrots and make music and enjoy life and have a funny view. And he just utterly delighted with all this. And he said, you should come to Tuva, and I'm going to guarantee it. I think that he understands what I understand, but what he likes and what I like are the same. You don't want to be treated as anybody special. Just a regular guy, he's just a Russian that's visiting, and these guys all shake hands with him. It's not the Academy of Science vice president, deputy in charge. You know, none of that. Nobody said a damn word about that. He was happy. So I hope that the trip he's arranging for us will turn out that way, if it'll turn out at all, which is still a question.
Three days later, Feynman went into the hospital. He died on Monday, the 15th of February. A few days after his death, a letter arrived from Moscow. Dear Professor Feynman, I have the great pleasure to invite you, your wife, and 4 of your colleagues to visit the Soviet Union. I was informed by Professor Kapitsa that you would like to visit Tuva and get acquainted of its sightseeing. We consider the most favorable time for such a trip to be the period of May and June 1988. Your trip will take 3 to 4 weeks. Kindly note that the Academy of Sciences will cover your expenses. Yours sincerely, Vice President Velikov.
Well, we're getting a little philosophical and serious, okay? Let's go back to what we're doing. One day we look at a map and its capital is KYZYL. We've decided it would be fun to go there because it's so obscure and peculiar. It's a game. It's not serious. It doesn't involve some deep philosophical point of view about authorities or anything. It's just fun of having an adventure to try to go to a land that we'd never heard of, that we knew was an independent country once. It's no longer an independent country. Find out what it's like and discover as we went along that nobody went there for a long time and it's isolated. Made it more interesting. You know, many explorers like to go to places that are unusual, and it's only for the fun of it. And I don't go for this philosophical interpretation of our deeper understanding of what we're doing. We haven't any deep understanding of what we're doing. If we tried to understand what we're doing, we'd go nutty.